Hey guys, Alex West, executive producer of the Swingmen here, just letting you know we're doing a little bit of a format change this week. We're going with an open forum discussion and we're just trying this out just to see how people like it. So comment, let us know how you feel about the new format. We're not married to anything. We're just trying to grow and learn how to do the show. So let us know how you feel about it. Pretty good show. I enjoyed doing it. So, just interested in your feedback. So make sure and drop us a comment. Anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Simon and guys, enjoy the show.
You're watching The Swingmen, presented by the 94 Feet Report.
Welcome to The Swingmen, presented by the 94 Feet Report. I'm your host, Simon Cherin-Gordon. We've been off for a week, so I'm excited to get the colloquial ball rolling here. Let's first start by swinging the rock around to our team. First, want to introduce Celtics outsider, really Swingmen outsider, Andrew Johnson. Andrew, how you doing?
Doing great, coming out of retirement for this very special edition, and just excited for that colloquial ball feel,
This is going to be a very colloquial ball episode, so excited to have you here. We also have 94 Feet Report writer and Hoops Habit writer Josh Cornelissen with us.
Guys, apparently I'm old. Ben Simmons was trying to get Karl-Anthony Towns to play PUBG. I don't even know what that is. Is that like Fortnite? Is that how long it takes to play PUBG? I have no idea what's going on. Does anybody have Crash Bandicoot still?
Oh, yeah, that. We have 94 Feet Report podcast co-host Corban Ford.
Hey, y'all. And I have a problem. My fantasy basketball team is named Kauai 5-0. Thought it was fancy. I haven't won a game yet, and the season's almost over. I need some help.
Loving this format already, guys. We also have our executive producer, Alex West.
We decided we were going to change the show up, go a little bit more free format, and it is already just tanked to the bottom. So I guess we're the Phoenix Suns of NBA Twitter talk shows.
All right, guys, let's start things off here. I think we have to talk about Steph Curry right from the top. So the Golden State Warriors, we've talked about their injuries. We've talked about how, is it a blessing in disguise for them to be getting this rest right now, even if they don't get the 2 seed. All of that changed in Steph's first game back from his sprained ankle when he sprained his MCL. Now, we remember last time he sprained his MCL, it was ostensibly a big reason that the Warriors didn't win the championship after their 73-win season. So where I wanted to start is, what is the concern level here? Obviously, it happened earlier with 3 weeks left in the regular season, but it brings back those memories, and the Warriors aren't going to have any easy first-round matchups. Guys, how concerned should we be with this?
So I think you have to be at least a little worried. When Steph Curry's on the court, the Warriors are incredible. They've got plus 14.4 net rating during non-garbage time minutes when he's on the court, and only a plus 2.5 when he's off. So that's a huge disparity and speaks to how good Steph Curry is and how much he means to this team. Chris Herring over at 538 wrote a great piece talking about how the offense is going to have to change because the offense works because Curry elevates everyone he plays with. Literally every major player on the team shoots better and plays better when Curry's on the court. Now, that being said, they're still positive when he's off the court. And that net rating, plus 2.5, would still be good for 6th in the conference if that was their net rating over the season. So that tells me the first-round matchup probably isn't what we need to be worried about. Ultimately, it all comes down to where his health is for the conference finals. And that's why I think it matters, because the last time Curry wasn't healthy in the playoffs, they lost that 3-1 lead to the Cavs.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, Josh. The thing is, Curry, and I talked to a Warriors beat writer who will remain nameless, but I had him on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about Steph Curry's gravity and the way he sort of creates space for other players just by simply existing. And when you think about that, losing that impact, it's not going to be a big deal when you have to play Minnesota if that's the round 1 matchup. Utah might be a little bit more problematic, but I certainly don't see it being a huge issue. But when you get into Houston, who has a set of capable defenders, they've shown throughout the season that they can defend at multiple positions, they can switch, and they really do a good job with all of that. I think having that gravity is going to be really important for the team to just sort of get into their flow offensively. And, that's going to be a really big issue for them to have to deal with going forward. But if Curry's healthy, I mean, I don't know that we're really talking about a major story here.
It's interesting, Alex. Said Warriors beat writer who will definitely remain nameless here wrote an article today for Hoops Habit, check it out, about the Warriors' first round playoff matchups, and this writer actually talked about how Minnesota might be the worst matchup for Golden State. I think what his point was is that if Jimmy Butler's back, Minnesota's the one team with a guy who can ostensibly guard Kevin Durant, maybe not cancel him out as a two-way player, but get pretty close to that. And Karl-Anthony Towns has been a monster for Draymond Green to handle in the post. Zaza Pachulia can't guard him because he can step out to the three-point line. He can free up shooters with screens. And if your center goes out to the three-point line, say what you will about Andrew Wiggins, he's getting to the rim all day, and so is Butler. Golden State's going to have a lot of trouble defending this team, and if Minnesota can just neutralize KD a little bit, I don't think that matchup is good for Golden State. I agree with you. Utah's not either. I think there's a lot of teams the Warriors are worried about facing in round one if Steph doesn't play.
The really interesting thing about that, sort of to pick up on that point, is I think Draymond's had a lot of trouble with Karl-Anthony Towns. Towns is a really big guy. I mean, he's a legit 7-footer, and Draymond's had a lot of trouble guarding him through the season, getting muscled a little bit on the block, and I think Towns is a little bit quicker than he is. So that makes an interesting sort of dynamic of, do you play Zaza? Do you go with this bigger lineup, which I never advocate, by the way. But, in the secondary part of that is what do you do with Draymond? How do you keep, other defensive deficiencies from being exposed when you play these lineups that are, ostensibly not the best lineups to guard Minnesota? And I think that's a legitimate question for them. Now, again, I'm going to say that, and I'm going to keep harping on it. I don't think any of the bottom four seeds of the West will win a game, much less the series, but I do understand where that concern comes from.
So I'm more concerned about the continuity of the team when all of them come back, assuming they all come back healthy and in time, for that first round matchup, that second round matchup. Are they going to have that same togetherness that at least they had for the year? They may not have that edge that they had in years past. And there were injuries, obviously, and effort waning in and out, but how are they going to play? With that layoff, each one out for a number of weeks, and then Curry coming back for a game and then going right back out midway through the game. Is there going to be any rust to work out? Any patterns? You're a team, you've been together, but when you're playing different opponents and they smell blood and they're coming at you, are you going to sink into hero ball? Are you going to stay the course? Are you even going to be in rhythm? Because that's also a very big thing for players that are missing time. Even world-class shooters like Curry and Thompson and Kevin Durant. So for me, that's more of a concern for me. You play a tough team. You're out of sorts. You already don't have that fire that you've had. You had 4 long years of deep playoff runs, and here you go again. You're not exactly going in at 100%, 90%, would you even say 75, And that's giving your bench a bigger role, but I don't know if that's what you want, facing these hungry teams. And like you said, guys, these matchups are not easy.
The Rockets are the team that scares me the most from a Warriors perspective. 70% Steph, I think, will get you there. You guys have all made very compelling arguments, stat-based, and honestly took a lot of the sauce out of the hot take here. But but I do think if the Warriors are half the team that we've all expect them to be, that the Rockets are the only team that I would be worried of. If I was a member of the Warriors, the Rockets are the only team that would worry me.
Yeah, Andrew, I'm inclined to agree with you. Their roster is built to withstand something like this. And, we want to see healthy superstars, but it's also going to be really exciting to kind of see if they can. But an area where it's going to be less exciting is if Joel Embiid's not back in time for the playoffs. Embiid fractured his orbital bone and is expected to miss 2 to 4 weeks was the report. We'll see if he's ready to go. I think that's the type of injury maybe you can play through, put on a face mask, but I'm no expert. I'm not going to question a guy's toughness. I've never fractured an orbital bone, that's for sure. But if Joel Embiid is healthy and the Sixers are ready to go, what do you guys think this team can do in the East? And then the flip side of that, if Embiid is not healthy, do the Sixers have any chance of making any first round noise, or is that are they going to get swept by whoever they end up facing? Let's throw this one to Alex to start.
Yes, I really think that that's a pretty compelling question because it's a very night and day. It's a dichotomy of if Joel Embiid's healthy, this is a really good team. They're 19-5 over their last 20. They've just been absolutely impressive. They've been incredible. They've played well, and they've really gelled, which I think is a big point for them. So if Embiid is healthy, this is a very dangerous team in the East. Now, I mean, of course, on the flip side, if he's not healthy, I think it's very much a possibility that we see Ben Simmons get slapped into brackets and then play 5 feet off of him and really force him to be a great player and to make shots, which is going to be a difficult prospect for him, as we have seen throughout the season. So I would say it is entirely possible that they make a conference finals run, depending on how they match up. I mean, as a Celtics fan, I know that I am terrified to see that team healthy in the second round if that matchup were to shake out. And so, but on the flip side, they could be a first-round exit without Joel Embiid.
So I actually think with or without Joel Embiid, the Sixers will only go as far as they can until they reach LeBron, because I've never been against LeBron, and that's where all the roads end. Obviously, if Joel Embiid isn't there, you might see like a really good Ben Simmons game or an awkward fist pump Saric game, to maybe take a game or two in the first round. That'll be cool, and then they'll go and we'll move on. But if not, you're going to see an epic, I'm going to say 6-game matchup against the Cavs, and then LeBron's going to do what he does, and we're just going to wait till next year. And that's the way I look at it. I don't really think the variance is that big a difference between first round and, I don't know, a possible second round matchup. And I don't know if that swings it for you guys, but I think it's going to be pretty much the same, just one level or the other. And we'll look at them either way because, this is the first time they made the playoffs in a while. They've had some really good success, and there are some polarizing players. But I don't know, honestly.
I think if I'm Philadelphia and I'm looking at the rest of the field, the only player that really scares me is LeBron James. I think with a healthy Embiid, they've got to feel good about playing anyone. Not to use the same numbers I used with Curry, but with Embiid on the court, Philly is in the 97th percentile offensively and the 95th percentile defensively. In other words, they're the elite of the elite when Embiid's on the court. When he's off the court, they're in the 23rd percentile offensively and the 40th defensively. So you just go from a really, 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 really good team to a pretty bad team. And the East isn't great, but they're going to get up, whether they play Washington or Miami or whoever they, Indiana, whoever they play in the first round. Without Embiid, I think they're in trouble. But with Embiid, I think short of LeBron, they don't fear anyone in the conference, and they shouldn't because they look really good. And their lineup with the combination of Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Robert Covington, JJ Redick, and Dario Saric is plus 22, has a plus 20 minutes. So that's a ton of time to be able to kind of see how good this lineup is. And they've proven that they are an elite lineup together, which is crazy. You wouldn't think Saric would be the missing link there, or that JJ Redick at his age could propel them to such heights, but they've been really good when that combination is there. So if you're asking me how high can they go, I think as long as they avoid LeBron, which it almost seems guaranteed they will until the conference finals, they could absolutely make a run to the final round.
Yeah, the really interesting point that you made there is about Saric and how well he's played off ball. He's a 40% three-point shooter this season, which is a little bit of an aberration compared to his career. But he's a 44% three-point shooter when he's on the court with Redick, with Joel Embiid, with Covington, and with Simmons. So he's actually shot incredibly well in that lineup. And I think that's a big difference maker for them, because I think having Redick and having Saric be able to play at a high level and make shots at a high level is the critical factor for them to succeed. And I mean, sorry to say, Corban, I feel like if they shoot as well as they have shot in some games this season, they have a chance against LeBron, just because I feel like that's a pretty deep unit, and the way they play defense is pretty impressive.
I don't even have words for that. I respect your opinion. I think that is wrong because LeBron James, man, like I just have to say those two words. And are these young Sixers even ready for that playoff intensity defense? Not that the Cavs are going to give it. I just want to know if they're ready for it. Because
see, that's the thing. The Cavs going to give it.
But LeBron, he turns off all his social media. He'll stop talking about the MVP race that he hasn't been in since about January. And I don't know if anyone's going to stop him. He's going to steamroll them. You know what I mean? And then J.R. Smith might wake up. You heard about him, Rick, with that therapy dog, and that's been helping him have a shooting slump, or so he says. And I'm not here to bag on it. I respect it. But when the Cavs really are engaged and LeBron leads them and that's how far they go, I think that the Sixers are still a year away from being that threat. And that's just how I feel about it. But I'm with you. They could be challenging. I just don't know if they're quite ready yet. This is their first year in the playoffs.
You swayed me with Zero Dark 30. I forgot about Zero Dark 30, which is a pivotal point of like the LeBron playoff time.
Is Air Bud his therapy dog? Come on, guys. Seriously.
Didn't he go?
I read the article and I was like, with a guy like JR, that would be the most apropos thing to help him out. Forget team pressure and helping the team. I get the dog. I'm not saying it's wrong. That was interesting to me.
All right, guys, but so Corban, you brought up the point about are they ready? And we've had all the talk about what Embiid is. Josh brought up the stats. Embiid's on and off. Where I want to go with this, though, is under that premise that Philly's young and inexperienced, but also extremely talented, especially with their top-end young superstar. Are we forgetting about the Milwaukee Bucks here? I mean, Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think, is theoretically a better player than Joel Embiid is at this point. And in the Eastern Conference, really, I would say the second best player after LeBron James. So if that's the case, I know the coaching in Milwaukee, there's so many problems with that team on both sides of the floor. But if talent wins in the playoffs, are we forgetting about the Bucks or anyone else as a sleeper? My eyes on Milwaukee, though, clearly. What do you guys think about that?
I wish I could say don't bet against Joe Prunty, but I would. So, I mean, I like Milwaukee. Again, I'm just not sure. They feel like they're going to run into the same obstacles they ran in previous years where Giannis is going to be great, as he is, but is the supporting cast enough to lift them over the top, And with the way they've been playing, they've definitely been playing better. I'm not saying, knock against them, and Prunty for, being forced into that interim spot has been doing well, but I don't see it. I mean, I'm still worried a little bit about shooting. Well, I'm definitely worried about shooting. And then when they just funnel all that defensive attention onto Giannis, who's going to be the next man up? Eric Bledsoe could, but I mean, I'm not sold on it. Jabari Parker's definitely back. Again, I'm not particularly the most confident in that. And that's what I mean. There's a lot of questions there. There is, as you said, a lot of talent there, Simon, and I'm with you on that. But I don't know. Is Giannis still, is he almost that singular star right now that could take that team, let's say, win a playoff series by himself, maybe win 2? And that's what I think would have to happen for them to be making any sort of positive headway in that sense. Otherwise, it's going to be a tough 6-game, 7-game out, just like last year, in my opinion.
Now, I have to first give a shout out to my fans in Canada. I have a ton of them right now. I'm so hot in Canada. So I said that to say this. Toronto, I don't think that there's any sort of imaginable capacity if Milwaukee is the 8 seed where they get past Toronto. I'm not necessarily in love with Toronto's playoff resume or how they're going to play or if shots are even going to fall for them. And in that regard, I could see a Giannis game, maybe 2 Giannis games where he sort of takes over and does it. But I think when you look at the talent that is players 2 through 7, 2 through 8, 2 through 9, whatever you want to make that playoff rotation, I think Toronto outclasses them pretty severely. So maybe I'm wrong here. And Josh is the man to talk to about this, but I just kind of feel like when you look at that talent disparity, if that ends up being the matchup, you've got a team there that is just not going to be able to get a lot done on either end of the floor.
So Giannis is going to be the best player on the court in any matchup without LeBron. That's clear and obvious. And he's been incredible this season, and he's only getting better. And I think the playoffs are an opportunity for him to really show his stuff. But ultimately, this team has too many bad habits that I think are going to kill them when the games get really important. Jason Kidd's defensive system was hyper aggressive. And even though Joe Prunty has installed a more kind of conservative scheme where the bigs lay back on the pick and roll and individual defenders get to rely on their defense and athleticism in one-on-one matchups, you've got guys running around in the back end of the play, jumping onto the nail, coming over from the weak side, because that's what they were trained to do, and instinctually that's what they want to do. And it's the same problems are still happening. Shooters are open, the basket is left unguarded, and that's got to be changed. That's got to be fixed. And I think that's only going to happen with an off season for like a reset with a new coach, sorry Prunty, and a new system. Habits of certain players being told not to shoot threes and focus on other areas. Well, it's all well and good, but you got to shoot threes in today's NBA, and these guys have to add these back into their skill set. So this team is very talented. Eric Bledsoe is really good and still has got to figure out his fit on this team. Chris Middleton is underrated and overrated, depending on who you talk to. Malcolm Brogdon has actually made huge steps forward in things like shooting around the rim. They've gone unnoticed as he's been injured, and there's been the chaos around Jason Kidd. So this team has pieces there, but really to put it all together, I think they need an offseason, a fresh look, a new coach. And this postseason, I don't think those hoping for Milwaukee to make a deep run are going to see that come to fruition.
Yeah, to echo everyone else, I think in terms of an individual player, Giannis, amazing. But the bar has been set historically, I think, for 2007 LeBron. And I don't think he's 2007 LeBron yet. If we're talking about individual talent, it's going to take you all the way to knock on that door. Giannis is great, but 07 LeBron.
I think you're right, Andrew, that we might be setting the bar a little too high for Giannis at this point. I'm more high on this roster than I think a lot of people are. I think that people talk about Milwaukee doesn't have enough floor spacing. To me, Chris Middleton, Malcolm Brogdon, Eric Bledsoe, Tony Snell, they have shooters on this team. Even a guy like Don Maker at the 5. Granted, what Josh said, these guys have been trained not to shoot and all. There's a ton of issues, but I think there's the talent, and sometimes you get into the playoffs, talent can kind of win out. But Milwaukee might be a year away. Let's go over to the Western Conference, though. There are some awesomely talented young teams out there, too. We talked about Minnesota earlier. We talked about Utah. You have the veteran teams like San Antonio, Oklahoma City, and maybe the Clippers and Nuggets, although I think that ship has sailed. But do any of these teams in the bottom of the West pose any sort of threat to you guys? I'll throw this right back to you, Andrew. Do any of these teams have that kind of Sixers, maybe Bucks sleeper potential, or is it more clear cut out West?
I mean, I guess you can imagine a situation where everything falls right. The Warriors are too injured. The Timberwolves make us shock the world moment. But I mean, to say that'd be just disingenuous. I think I don't think anyone does. I think there's a lot of exciting teams out there, and I think the fans of those teams should be very excited about their future. But I don't see anyone making too much noise. No, not the exciting answer, but the one I believe in.
Yeah, I think the team that is probably the most exciting to me is the team that's probably going to get housed, and that's the Utah Jazz. If they end up in the 8th seed, they've played tremendously well. Donovan Mitchell is blossoming into a fantastic player. Rudy Gobert has proven that even in his limited capacity, he's probably the defensive player of the year. He's the best defender in the league. This is a team that has a ton of stuff going for him. Now, unfortunately, they're going to have to play Houston in the first round and probably get taken apart unless Joe Ingles shoots like 4,000% from 3, which is possible, I suppose. But the thing is, that's the team that's most exciting, and unfortunately, they're going to run into a buzzsaw. Now, if they were to creep their way into the 5 seed and they had to play the Spurs in the first round or the Thunder in the first round, then you have a team that I could definitely see making the second round. But whoever has to play the Warriors and whoever has to play the Rockets has just done for to me.
I think the hope from the bottom of the Western Conference bracket are actually players coming back from injury. Minnesota's got Jimmy Butler coming back. Do the Spurs have Kawhi coming back? You don't know. So I think these are where we add variance. And so we don't often know what's going to happen. And so especially with a team like Portland that has lost Maurice Harkless until probably the second round, you've got the Warriors dealing with their own injuries. There's the opportunity for things to kind of get shuffled around and mixed up, especially when you have new guys coming in like Butler and Kawhi Leonard. So I think that introduces variance and could make the playoffs a lot more exciting. And I wouldn't be surprised if, say the 5 and the 6 seeds both won their matchups or something like that. Even if the 8 seed, like what if it's the Spurs and they get Kawhi back and they're in the 8 seed, or the Thunder drop to the 8 seed and they get to play Houston. I think they could push Houston to 6 or 7 games. I think there's a lot of potential for some drama and some excitement out west, just because all these teams are good and a lot of them could have really good players coming back.
And you know what, Josh? I also hear that the Clippers might have Danilo Gallinari coming back too. Could really shake things up. Corban, what do you think on this? Your Lakers, I think, were just eliminated yesterday, so don't give me that. But other than that, no one's mentioned AD yet. I mean, he's kind of the Giannis, Joel Embiid of the West here. Do the Pelicans have any chance, or are they just too depleted right now?
I was gonna say Anthony. I'll leave that Lakers comment alone for now, Simon. But I was gonna say I do believe in Anthony Davis. Do I believe that? I mean, currently he's allowed to play the Trailblazers. I believe he can make things interesting just by how much of a talent he is. Drew Holiday, I think, could give him a surprising 2 games or so. I don't know if they're gonna get out that first round matchup. The Trailblazers are kind of just in so much more continuity now, and also the Pelicans supporting cast outside of those two are rather hit and miss in my opinion. Although shout out to Emeka Okafor for a great story, and he'll be in the playoffs, man. That's kind of awesome. But I think he can obviously shake up a few things. I almost put him as you said, almost the Giannis of the East, where, as Alex referenced, he can give them 1 or 2 games, but I don't see them getting out of that round. I do want to add, though, the Thunder have us right where they want us. I mean, Russell Westbrook basically just threw away a game by himself. Carmelo-Anthony just can't play right now. Paul George hasn't hit a 3 since like February. And, they're falling deeper and deeper down the standings. But this is right where they want us to be because they're going to storm through. They're going to face the Warriors. Russ is going to come alive. I don't even know where I put the Rockets in that. But all I'm trying to say is y'all watch out for the Thunder, man. I'm on that train even as we go off the tracks.
Corban, I'm kind of in on this this theory that the Pelicans might have a shot against the Trailblazers. They've only played 1 game since the Cousins injury, and Portland did win at 107-103, and that was on March 27th. So that was just a couple of days ago. But I think that Anthony Davis is this singularly powerful player who can put up a 46 and 18 a couple of times in a couple of days. And I just don't think, as well as Nurkic has played, as well as Ed Davis has played, even as well as Zach Collins has played, I don't think that there's a lot of depth defensively for Portland. And I feel like it could be easier for the guards on New Orleans to stop CJ McCollum and to stop Dame Lillard than it might be to stop Anthony Davis, even though those players are tremendous and have played tremendously well. And I'm a big Dame defender right now. Stopping Anthony Davis sort of takes an act of Congress at this point.
I agree with you up to a point on that, Alex, because he is a very unique talent. There's only 2 things I wonder. One, it's been a while since he's been in the playoffs, and that focus will be on him. And the second thing, and this is just for Anthony Davis, the variance in his play is kind of crazy. He'll give you, like you said, like a 40 and 15 night, and then follow that up with a 12 and 8, a 13 and 8, and he's going to get the shots up. But when you have that increased focus on a concentrated amount of time, even if it's against inferior defenders, they will throw doubles. They will switch up the defensive schemes. And with Anthony Davis kind of having, play where he just reels off tremendous numbers, and then whether it's fatigue, his own play going down, maybe his teammates not giving the ball, which also is another problem because he's one of those players that, at least to a certain extent, he needs to get the ball in certain situations. He can't, set up and initiate the offense all by himself. That's the only thing I'm really worried about. And then when you look down the roster after that, let's say you take Anthony Davis and to at least a certain effect, not neutralize him, but limit his effectiveness. I mean, we got Drew Holiday, and then, Niko Mirotic will come on his unicorn and save the day. That is what I'm worried about. But I'm with you up to a point on that, Alex. I just have some reservations.
Etuan Moore's shooting 41.5% from 3. So, I mean, I think that settles it.
Smooch alert!
All right, guys, let's transition to a pretty interesting story here. Gordon Monson of the Salt Lake Tribune wrote a piece with the Boston Celtics coming to town the other day, a game that the Celtics stole without Gordon Hayward, who Monson claimed Utah was better off without. Now, the tone of the piece upset some people, saying that it was sour grapes. There was a lot of vitriol pointed in Monson's direction, and this is really nothing new. We've seen it with when Kevin Durant left Oklahoma City. There was the Mr. Unreliable piece. Paul George earlier this year returning to Indiana. A writer, Greg Doyle of the Indy Star, had some choice words for him, saying that the reaction should not be one of booing, but one of laughter because the Pacers are better off without him. There's a lot of controversy around this. Personally, I feel like if you're really better off without these players, why would you feel the need to write these pieces? But Josh, you're our cleanup hitter. Take us home here. What do you think about this?
I think it's fascinating because you have these small market writers who need access to the locker room. They need to be able to talk to the assistant coaches. They need to talk to the front office personnel, and they need to talk to the players. So they want to have positive relationships with these people. They're not objective. They have to be subjective because they don't have the weight of Bleacher Report or USA Today or ESPN behind them. So they need that positive relationship, which means they need to act like they're, got the back of those organizations. And so I think this is pretty common because they're trying to foster positive relationships with their team. They don't care, about these players that have left. But where I think you run into problems are when you have a situation such as when LeBron came back to Cleveland. Suddenly all these writers had to eat crow. Dan Gilbert himself had to make a personal apology to LeBron. Like, when you are, attacking these players who are still in the prime of their career and could absolutely circle back to an organization that they may have fond memories of, I think you're burning bridges that there's no reason you need to burn them. And I think it could be happening in Indiana where what do the Pacers need this summer? They need a 3. They're one of the only teams with cap space. Paul George is a free agent. Is that crazy? But you have all these bridges that were burned that is going to make Paul George not want to go back there, which he probably didn't anyway. But whatever chance there was has been slammed shut. And however successful they've been with Victor Oladipo, of course they'd be a better team with Paul George. And the same thing is true with Utah. They could have gotten Donovan Mitchell with the 13th pick and still kept Gordon Hayward because they got Mitchell before Gordon Hayward made his decision. So to act like, it was either or anything like that, it all circles back to the fact that they're just trying to foster goodwill with the team that they need to have a trust relationship with to get the access they need to be good at their jobs. It's just a circle where they're feeding each other, and it's not at all the objective journalism that I think we may want to be there.
So I kind of have an interesting take on this. I believe a little bit of pettiness is good for everyone, within reason. My thing is, especially on a professional level with beat writers and players and how that works out, maybe a more situational basis would be best, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that it's right at all, but I do feel, obviously, if you have something to say about a player, that's okay. But in Paul George's case, there was no reason because, as you guys have already mentioned, why? Obviously there's already a little bit of a rivalry. He said he wasn't going to come back. Respect the man's wishes. You traded him away. You got a good player. Let's move on. When Kevin Durant had his Mr. Unreliable piece in the playoffs, he was still very much in a contract for the Thunder, very much still playing for them, and in the middle of a tough series. How does that help anyone? The morale of the team, the morale of the public, anyone. That didn't work. And with the Jazz, not only did, Gordon Hayward and them part ways, but both seem to have gotten out of it. I mean, Gordon Hayward, mind you, with the injury and everything, hoping he gets back and all, but the Jazz have definitely been playing pretty successful, just chugging along in their own way. Why bring more attention to that and then have to give the Jazz another distraction as they're trying to secure a playoff spot and then have the public have to bring it back up and all this bashing and ill will? It didn't make sense to me. I could see if it was like a player leaves on acrimonious terms and, there's just no love lost, and then say whatever you want, in my opinion. It may not be popular, but that's how I feel. But as far as these are all concerned, as you guys have already mentioned, there's no reason. Like, why cook beef when there's nothing in the kitchen?
All right, guys, last topic of the night. This is a fascinating story. Darius Bazley is a 5-star recruit, All-American, McDonald's All-American, was committed to Syracuse until he just withdrew and is going to play this next year in the G League before becoming eligible for the NBA draft. It is a fascinating story, so many possibilities. Josh, I want to get your thoughts on this.
I think it is fascinating. I'm going to start by just reading the quote that he provided to Yahoo. So he said, quote, "The G League will have the most to offer, considering that is the development league for the NBA. I will get more out of that than going overseas. The G League is the closest thing to the NBA." He goes on and he says, "There have been a lot of successful guys who have been brought up in the G League, and I'm confident I will be one of them." He's wrong. There is not a train of success stories of guys coming from high school and going to the G League. This hasn't been done. The only guys that go to the G League prior to the draft are guys who, through character issues or academic issues, cannot qualify to play in college basketball. Or maybe they, didn't get going late, early enough to go overseas. So this idea that all these guys have gone up through the G League and then been drafted, that is a false dichotomy. That doesn't exist. So there is no success story here. And I think that really, if he's trying to maximize his draft stock, which is going to maximize the money that he makes early in his career, he should go to Syracuse. I mean, think about it. Syracuse players always get overdrafted. Dion Waiters, he went 4th overall. That was an overdraft. Johnny Flynn went before Steph Curry, DeMar DeRozan, Drew Holiday, Jeff Teague, Ty Lawson back in 2009, overdraft. Malachi Richardson, Tyler Lydon. Those guys are about to get washed out of the league, and they were selected in the middle of the first round. Fab Melo, anyone?
No!
This is what Jim Boeheim gets his guys overdrafted. He gets them, money early in their career, and he's losing out on that by going to the G League. And look, in the G League, no one's going to be on his side. every G League team is tied to an affiliate NBA franchise, which means that franchise is looking out for the parent team. So, for example, the Greensboro Swarm, they're focused on running Steve Clifford's offense and defense and teaching these fringe NBA players that system. So when the Hornets need a body, they can just call someone up, sign them to a 10-day whatever. And then occasionally Charlotte will send their young players like Malik Monk or Dwayne Bacon down to get them some reps. At Syracuse, Bazley would get those reps late in games, but on a G League team, it's going to go to the players that are actually controlled by that team. There's no incentive for them to help develop Bazley when he could go to their division opponent. So there's no one in the G League that's going to be looking out for him, and there's no mechanism in place to support his development. So ultimately, he's going to be making a pittance and setting himself up for failure, where at a place like Syracuse, even with all the issues of the NCAA right now, he'd actually be setting himself up for actual growth towards his ultimate goal of playing in the league.
Josh, I don't necessarily disagree with you. I mean, I certainly think that there are a lot of pitfalls that he can fall into as a player. However, I do feel like this kid is a trendsetter. There is a lot of talk about circumventing the NCAA in whatever regard, as we've seen, with the FBI probes and all the things that have just gone on. The NCAA is not the cleanest organization, nor is it the most concerned about putting the kids in a position to succeed. Whereas if the NBA were to take control of the situation, if basketball academies, something we've talked about on this program, even were a possibility in the future, a step like this was necessary. And for this kid to decide that he wanted to play in the G League, to start with NBA coaching, to go from high school to, set his talent up to succeed, maybe this is a possibility. And maybe in the future, there are teams that are devoted to these kinds of players as opposed to letting an organization control it and thereby avoiding the offensive and defensive scheme pitfalls that you addressed so eloquently. But I think that this is the stone that maybe starts the avalanche. And I could be wrong. We could look back on this in a couple of years and say that this was a fluke. It was a one-time thing. It was, a lot like what happened with Moutier. But this could be a situation where we're in for a little bit of a change in the guard in the way that players go from high school to professional basketball.
I think you're right that there needs to be a change, and I think that we could look back on this as kind of the first step towards circumventing the NCAA, but the change has to come not from players who are in line for these big schools to start going to the G League to make $20,000 a year and to not be developed. I think the change has to come from the NBA side. And so maybe this will keep fostering the conversation to allow real change to be made, but the current structure is setting these kids up for failure. And if Adam Silver and the league really want to help empower these young men, prepare for their long-term careers, then I think more serious changes have to happen.
I think we're probably one player away from that. There are a couple of high caliber players in the 2019 class who haven't committed or haven't signed their letters of intent or whatever. And I think that we're at one of those, turning point situations where if one more player were to commit it, maybe it's an issue we start to address this summer as a league. And as we move forward, that would probably be a possibility. But at this point, we just have not hit that critical mass. And I think that's a super, super important part of starting this discussion is hitting that critical mass with two players out of the top 10, two players out of the top 15, three, something like that. Then the discussion starts to pick up. But I think this is going to be, maybe get it started this summer a little bit.
Okay, guys, great discussion, but that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for watching the Swingmen presented by the 94 Feet Report. Been great having you guys, this new format. I'm feeling it. Hopefully we can keep it going. Any parting shots from anyone here before I close things out?
In a vacuum, this is the best show ever.
Petty.
I just want to say, Simon, props for actually getting some artwork on your wall. I think following my trend here, hopefully class up the joint a bit. And Andrew maybe can cover up his little electric box.
I've got more of an avant-garde situation going here. It's not for everyone.
Yeah, it's a Marcel Duchamp piece.
All right, guys. Show's canceled. So you know what? Just find new jobs. See you whatever. Anyway.
Speaking of jobs, if you see any crazy tweets at the 94 Feet handle, it's because I'm, putting them out there. Please comment, hate on me. I don't care. Just let's have something going. I just want to smooch the action.
Smooging it is. Corban's running the Twitter now, so you heard him. If you don't follow us there, that's at the 94 Feet Report. Also, make sure to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube, 94 Feet Report channel. Watch the Swingmen every week, and we'll see you guys next Friday.
Thanks for watching The Swingmen, presented by the 94 Feet Report.